Hello, this is Pastor Jeff Short, and you are watching Christ in Culture. Glad to have you along today for the program. Today I'm going to be doing a movie review of the recently released movie called Bombshell, and it is an expose of the work environment under the leadership of a man named Roger Ailes at Fox News. And this movie is supposed to be an expose about how the work environment was under him and the sexual harassment allegations and claims of women who worked around him and that he hired to be news reporters, anchor women, news directors, certain things in fulfillment of the Fox News vision. And if you've ever watched television for any time, political commentary, you're familiar with Fox News. It is the more conservative alternative to the more liberal CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC. Most of the major mainline media outlets are far left, radical liberal news outlets. There's no question about that. And as Christians, we've noticed this bias for many, many, many years. In fact, back in a couple decades ago, there was a saying, there was a bumper sticker you would see around town that said, the news on CBS is rather biased, in reference to Dan Rather, because Dan Rather was the news anchor man for the CBS Evening News. And they would have bumper stickers saying, the news at CBS is rather biased. And it was all leftist, liberal, democratic, so-called progressivist, news-oriented. And then now, today, you have CNN, you have, especially on the more radical leftist fringe, MSNBC with Rachel Maddow and the whole cast of characters over there. But if you basically go to any news outlet other than Fox News, you will get a radical leftist, so-called progressivist, Democratic Party talking point news angle on everything. You just name it. Abortion, pro-abortion all the way for the new major news outlets, pro-LGBTQ, pro-feminism, just the whole leftist agenda bottled in a nutshell, there for everyone to influence everyone who tunes into CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, and all the other smaller news outlets. Now, Fox News is about the only major media outlet that has any semblance of a conservative bias. And Fox News's motto is fair and balanced. Well, I guess that's in reference to all the other news outlets. So they're more conservative and clearly biased in the conservative direction to balance it out. Not that their reporting is totally 100% objective, balanced, but their angle, their perspective, where they're coming from, balances out. They're trying to balance out the whole secular leftist media outlets that they're competing against. Well, a big part in creating Fox News was an individual named Roger Ailes. He has since then passed away. He's gone now. He's no longer here. But he was the mastermind behind the whole Fox News network concept, to provide an alternative to the liberal leftist media that was dominating for decades and decades and decades. So, and he, along with people like a Rush Limbaugh on radio, sort of pioneered this conservative outlet, conservative voice in the United States. So he is a huge influence in not only the news, but he's also a huge influence in politics, because it's hard to imagine, for example, even someone like the current president even making it an office without some kind of alternative conservative network that would be a place for conservatives to go to get their news. It's hard. It just as it would be difficult to imagine the current president without people such as, for example, on radio, Rush Limbaugh. So he did that for radio. Rush Limbaugh did that for radio, and then Roger Ailes has sort of done that to the television outlet and given conservatives a voice on television. And Fox News is doing very well. They're probably more popular. Their conservative television outlet is more popular as far as ratings go than any of the other leftist liberal media outlets. Although, of course, if you put all of the leftist liberal media outlets together, they're bigger than Fox News. But Fox News is bigger than any one of them. Even CNN, it's bigger than CNN as far as the viewership and everything. So it's highly successful. The formula that Roger Ailes came up with was very highly successful in attracting viewerships. And it was basically because there were a lot of people, and there are a lot of people in the United States that don't want to see this liberal leftist agenda pushed on the population, and they don't want to see it permeate the whole society like the reporters on CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, and so forth are pushing. And so it's a simple matter of supply and demand. There is a big demand for a more conservative-based news perspective, and that's what Fox News is. Now, one of the characteristics that you will notice if you turn on Fox News is that they have a lot of women reporters and a lot of women in stylish attire. Their wardrobe. They wear a lot, there are a lot of blondes on camera, and they wear a lot of short dresses and tight dresses. And this is one of the things that has characterized Fox News all its short life. And it's very obvious. You can notice that when you tune it in. And not that the other alternative networks like CNN, MSNBC, and so forth don't have a lot of women reporters and anchor women, and not that they don't wear stylishly fashionable clothes and oftentimes revealing clothes, and they're dressed up like models. And there's obviously an attempt to glamorize the news. They do that too. But at Fox News, under Roger Ailes, he was looking for this right type of woman who would attract men, make news glamorous, would attract the eyes of men, and get more viewership. And his formula, if you want to put it that way, actually works out there in the world. And so a lot of people did tune in to Fox News, especially men, especially men. And they love to watch the women, and they still love to watch the women stylishly dressed, and they just enjoy that aspect of the news. So the problem, though, that this movie exposes is that Roger Ailes was not simply recruiting women to appear on camera and attract viewerships. He was actually using them for his own personal sexual fulfillment. And he would harass women. He would make them model for him. He would also ask them for sexual favors, and in some cases they would give those sexual favors. And these are professional career women. Now, not all of them did, but most of them, or even all of them, did experience at some point, according to the movie, sexual harassment from Roger Ailes when they would go to meet with him. And so one of them is named Gretchen Carlson, and she was the one who a few years back filed a lawsuit against Roger Ailes, and personally against Roger Ailes. And so she won the lawsuit because she got other women from Fox News, either present employees of Fox News or past employees of Fox News, to testify that they too had been harassed by Roger Ailes. So there was Roger Ailes was removed as the president of Fox News, and he was then even not just removed from president, but he was no longer employed. He was fired essentially by his boss, who is Rupert Murdoch and the Murdoch family, billionaires who are the ones that actually own the Fox News network and who employ Roger Ailes. So Roger Ailes made them billions and billions of dollars on Fox News, but they fired him because of these sexual harassment complaints. And they did an internal investigation and found that it sounds like they were true. So they fired him. And then shortly thereafter, I think within a year or so, he passed away. So kind of a tragic ending to his life. He had succeeded in so much. He succeeded in building a good empire, media empire, that did provide a valuable service to the American population, which basically gave them an alternative media source that didn't get the pro-abortion, pro-LGBTQ, pro-feminist, just the whole leftist agenda. Fox News didn't cater to that and pander to that. They actually came at the news from a more conservative perspective, family value perspective, and so on and so forth. Yet, with all of the success of Roger Ailes and trying to create this conservative network, he evidently failed in controlling his own sexual passions and his own lustful desires. And that is a tragedy, because of all the good he did and all the creativity he brought to the industry, the media, television industry, he failed in his personal life because he couldn't control his passions. Even as an older man, he could not control his internal lusts and passions, and his will to power. He was a very powerful executive, his decisions could affect the lives of people and their careers. And he used his power and his position at Fox News to manipulate vulnerable women, impressionable women, for sex or for his own lustful pleasures. And unfortunately, all of the women did not say no, and they did not draw a line, and they did not stand up to him, but they played along to that. And so that is one of the things that the movie does not bring out, but I want to bring out. The movie does a good job in bringing out and painting Roger Ailes as a monster, which by any definition is actually true in the way that he used his power and he used his position, and he used all of the manipulation he could to get his own lusts and sexual desires, fantasies fulfilled, which is immoral, which is wrong, which is sinful, and someone should have called him on the carpet, and somebody should have held him accountable. But see, this is a problem. When somebody is succeeding and somebody is doing something that other people like, and they don't want to mess up the formula, they want to, hey, he's on a roll, he's successful, he's making a lot of money, he's influencing the country, he's opposing the secular leftist agenda, he's doing all these things right. We don't want to upset the cart. We don't want to mess anything up here. If you've got a good thing going, don't mess it up. And so nobody held him accountable. And what I want to say is the movie brings out the part where he is a manipulator and he's a power hungry, power grab, sexual predator, and he was, according to the testimony of women who he tried to exploit, and some of them he actually did exploit. But it doesn't bring out the part where the women in this instance actually played into that whole system and perpetuated it. And so, yes, these women who worked at Fox News, in one sense, they were victims, but on the other side, they weren't victims. They were perpetuating the very system that victimized them. And what I mean is, there would be women who would be hired in for their looks, and then they would come to work in these short, skimpy skirts and want to go up to Roger Ailes' office to talk to him, to meet with him, to schmooze with him, as you might say, to get in his good graces. And then when he asked them to do inappropriate things like lift up their skirt or really stupid things like that, they would accommodate them. Some of these women who were so eager for career advancement, who are so ambitious, who are so desiring to be successful in the television industry, they would actually accommodate what he was asking them to do. And they would feel like if they don't do this, then their career is over. But see, that's helping perpetuate the system that Roger Ailes, set up. They're actually feeding the beast when they do that. They're actually making it harder for other women to say no and to fight that sinful system that Ailes had set up by giving in. So are these women victims? Yes, in the sense that they're there to do a job. They have a career vision. They have trained for a career. They must have some basic skills or else they wouldn't have been hired in the first place. They want to do their job. And then Ailes is saying, okay, you can advance here and you can have a successful career here and you can achieve your career goals and be famous and earn a lot of money, but you have to do these things. You have to jump through these hoops. And some of these hoops actually involve fulfilling my sexual fantasies. That's Ailes. And the women should have said right off the bat, no way. I am a person of integrity. I don't do that. I draw a line in the sand. I'm here to do the work, but I'm not here to cross that line. And they should have taken a stand. They shouldn't have been flirting around with this system, trying to exploit the system that Ailes set up for their own advantage. And then years later, come back and say, he did this to me. I'm a victim, which is what the movie did portray in a number of instances to some of the women. They actually were buying into that system. They were playing that system, playing that game, if you want to put it in terms of a game. They were playing the game, and they were using Ailes, and Ailes was using them. They were using Ailes to advance in their career and leap forward. Whereas if they didn't have Ailes, it would just take a long time for them to climb the corporate ladder, and they were trying to hopefully leap forward quickly by using Ailes, and Ailes was using them to fulfill his fantasies, his sexual fantasies, or whatever his needs were, his lustful desires, and to see women in semi-naked positions or whatever. And they could have stopped, the women could have stopped that right away if they had all just taken the hard line and say no. If he asked them to do something inappropriate, they would have said, well, I love working here, but no, I can't do that. Now, one of the women that did show, and it wasn't just Ailes, there were some other men Not very many, but there were some other men at Fox News who maybe they were trying to copy Ailes, or Ailes had said you can do this, but they were trying to exchange career positions with some women who were hired in for sex or for some kind of sexual inappropriate behavior. One woman actually who was recently hired came and said, "No, I will not. I love this job. I want this opportunity and I can do the work, but no, I will never do that." And she was fired within a couple weeks or so. And that would have happened to some of these other women, no doubt. But that is the price that you have to pay to have your integrity, to keep your character, to be a moral person. And I think that any woman who worked there for a long time and was willing to compromise her moral integrity, and then years later complained and was a part of the lawsuit filed against Ailes, that is playing the victim, but then not being a victim in one sense. Because yes, you're a victim anytime you're subject to some kind of sexual inappropriateness or sexual coercion or some kind of power dynamic where your boss is asking for sexual favors or is talking in sexual terms and inappropriate terms, in obscene terms or whatever. That's wrong. No question about it. But if you're a woman and you are letting that happen and you are not saying anything, and or worse, you're going along with that and you're giving into those manipulative power dynamics, and you're perpetuating this whole sick system. If you're doing that and you're also benefiting from it because you're willing to compromise your integrity to get ahead in your career, that means you've made your career an idol. You've put your career above your own integrity. And if you're willing to do that, then you can't come back years later and say, hey, I was exploited. I was victimized. Yes, you were on one hand, but on the other hand, you played the system too. And it's the same way with a lot of women who have done foolish things. The Me Too movement out in Hollywood exposed a lot of the foolishness that goes along with getting hired in Hollywood. And you would have the situation where some Hollywood executive would ask a young movie actress, attractive movie actress, to come up to his hotel room late at night. Well, what would she imagine would be the reason why this media mogul wants her to come late at night to his own private hotel suite? These women oftentimes understood the terms of this sick game that they were playing. And unfortunately, a lot of them were willing to play along with that if they thought it would help them in their career. And that's the same way that you see taking place at Fox News. You had these women. Now, not all of the women. Some of the women were aware that these things were going on, and they had in fact been approached by Ailes to fulfill some sick, perverted sexual fantasy of his, and they would always rebuff him and turn him down. And they still kept their job for some reason. Maybe they were big enough, high profile enough, they were making the network enough money so that they couldn't just be fired outright. But they had to also realize that there would come a day when the cost-benefit analysis by Ailes would mean that if they didn't do what he wanted them to do personally, that they would get fired. So they were kind of playing a very dangerous game anyway. So the whole upshot of this movie is that it exposes the corruption that goes on in the secular world. And it's not just Fox News. And unfortunately, this Roger Ailes was probably one of the worst, but it probably goes on in other networks. We know it goes on in Hollywood. There's no question about that. I don't think anybody questioned that this kind of activity was going on in Hollywood before the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement, it's as if Hollywood acts like, because they're good actors, acts like, oh, this is all surprising. Everybody knew that was going on. People who weren't even part of Hollywood assumed that that was going on. To what extent, nobody knew. Who was doing it and who wasn't doing it, we don't know. We never knew. That's behind the scenes. Same way with these big, high-profile television networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, now the big cable networks. There's stuff like this going on all the time because people are sinful and separated from God, or they're weak and they don't resist temptation. It's just a part of, for example, Roger Ailes. He was giving into the flesh. He was giving into temptation. He had power. He had money. He had position. He used that for his own selfish sexual fulfillment. And the women who gave into his demands and who played the system, they were giving in to the temptation to succeed and have money and fame and success. And they were willing to trade away their integrity and character, and were willing to sell their bodies basically like a prostitute might, only they wouldn't put it in those crass terms, but that's essentially what it is. They were willing to trade some kind of sexual something for career advancement. And the ones that drew the line said, nope, I'm not going there. I'm not going to do that. Maybe they do get fired, but that's the price a person of integrity pays. So in one sense, I feel really bad for the women who had to work in that environment. They didn't have to work in that environment. They could have left. They could have quit. The career is not everything. The career is not their whole life. They could have moved on. They could have seen the whole scene going on, saying, you know what, this place is rotten. This place stinks. I'm out of here, and quit on their own. So people have choices. Men have choices. Women have choices. If the women play with the system and play with the fire, they're going to get burnt. And then when they get burnt, they can't say that they're 100% victim when they were part of the problem in perpetuating that whole crooked system. So the movie called Bombshell was a good movie in exposing the sinfulness of some work environments. Unfortunately, I'm afraid it's probably a lot of work environments. But it just does bring into focus that people who are working in any field need to make choices, and they have to hold to their integrity, and they have to say thus far and no more. You know, there are lines. You can't cross them. And as Christians especially, if you're in a situation at work where your boss or the people above you, superiors, are putting pressure on you to violate a moral standard, or are pressuring you to lie or be deceitful or do something that violates the biblical Christian moral standard, you say no. And if that gets you fired, that's the price. You have to trust God that He is going to bring about His will in good due time. So I hope that's a helpful analysis of some of the issues that this movie Bombshell raises. And I would recommend the movie, except the profanity is really bad. It seems like these women, every other word they're using is a swear word, profane, curse word, whatever. So if you do see the movie, if you want to go see this, be aware that the profanity is big in this movie. And some of the scenes are very shocking, and but there's no sexual content or anything like that. I would say overt sexual content. It's just mostly shocking to see people acting in their sinful ways as they do. Well, hope that's been a good analysis. We'll talk to you next week on another episode of Christ in Culture. God bless.